Welcome to the new season of the Live Your Spa Life show. The Spa in Spa Life stands for Seek Power Always, that divine power within you to do what you're here to do. The theme for this season is Freedom Fighter. Amazing people like you share ways to ensure your freedom physically, financially, spiritually, and in your relationships to create a world-class life. In these times of uncertainty, it's time for you to move past the distractions and start trusting yourself more through your God-given knowingness. No one truly knows better what's best for you than you. In this season, you'll have plenty of examples of people choosing their best life and giving a voice of freedom to those who are also looking to have their best life. Thank you for sharing your precious time with us and being part of the Live Your Spa Life conversation. With us today is Robert Commodari, who comes from a family of 7 siblings growing up in the Northeast Baltimore City. He started working at 11 and paid his way through private high school and college. In 1990, he read his first inspirational book and read things over the last 31 years. He has read over 1,000 books, which is amazing. And Rob is a passionate speaker, a #1 best-selling author of Better Than You Think, host of the podcast Chiseled, and he has spoken to thousands of people over the years, inspiring them to develop awareness to live a more fulfilling life. Rob leads his own real estate group and has sold over 2,000 homes in his 21-year career. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a great show today.
Thank you so much. One of the things, people look at people's journey and, they see the success at the end and they don't necessarily see the path along the way. And, especially in the last couple of years, fear has come, up for a lot of people. What are some of the ways that you move through fear?
Well, one of the things I've done over the years through all this personal growth and development and reading and studying is I've learned to watch how I talk to myself, number one, and two, coach myself. So when that fear comes up, a lot of us have the what if, and we use what if from a place of fear instead of what if it all works out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I'm sitting there thinking, Rob, if I start having that fear going in my mind, I'm like, Rob, are you telling yourself a story? Is this exactly how it's going to be? And the answer is no. So you just roll with it and just keep moving forward and push yourself forward.
That kind of reminds me of like the, angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other, right? And, they could say that, your mind is a bad neighborhood. Don't go in there by yourself, and have the tools to actually be able to talk to yourself. And so I think sometimes people forget because they look outside of themselves that they have those answers within themselves and they can ask themselves some of those questions. So I think that is a really helpful tool.
Yeah, you mentioned the angel and the devil, right? And you could sit there and say the positive dog or the negative dog. And the question is, which one wins?
Yeah.
And the answer is the one you feed the most.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. Well, and you've done so many great things on your travel. And one of the things I had to smile at is tell us about Dancing with the Stars.
Oh my gosh. Talking about stepping outside your comfort zone, right? So I am not a dancer. I don't have much rhythm, or I didn't have it until now. And so I wrote the book, I published the book, and my mom's she has dementia. And so I put it out there that the first year, and half of all the proceeds were going to go towards the Alzheimer's Association. And somebody, a friend of mine, saw it, and she calls me up and she says, Rob, this is so exciting. It's so great that you're doing this. I'm part of the Alzheimer's Association. I work with them, and I'd love to help you help out. And I'm like, sure, I'd love to help out. What do you need me to do? And she goes, need you to dance. And I'm like, no way. So anyway, so she asked me to dance, and I thought about it for a little while. I was like, this isn't about me. It's about my mom and everybody that suffers from that dreaded disease. And that said, I'm like, all right, I always talk about getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, stepping outside your comfort zone. And I'm like, I'm going to give this thing a shot. And part of the plan was, they were asking you to raise $25,000 to do this. So this happens. This was in 2020 because I just published the book in January 2020, and I agreed to it. So I started taking dance lessons for a couple months, and then bang, COVID hits. So they canceled it in 2020 and they canceled it in 2021. And then they said, okay, we're going to do this in it was April 30th of 2022. So in the process, I started talking to people about it. And Diane, I took 7 months of lessons consecutively every week. And for the last 4 or 5 months, I was taking them twice a week. And instead of in the beginning, it was like, all right, I just want to get through this. Then it was like, I can't wait to do this. And so it was a whole tweaking thinking. And it also became, I don't want to use, I'm going to use the word game, but it became a competitive thing for me to raise the money. And it was raising money for a cause. And what I realized in the process, when you're like I'm in the real estate business and I have to make calls to my clients and so on and so forth. And sometimes you struggle with that. You have this call reluctance thing, but when you're making calls for a cause, it makes it a whole lot easier, and it makes it more competitive. It's fun. And so in the process, I did this dance thing. It was in front of 700 people, Dancing with the Stars. It was 9 people participating. I had a professional dancer that I was taking the lessons with, and I raised $68,000 in the process. Wow. So it was an amazing experience, and I'm ready to do it again, but they won't let you do it 2 years in a row.
So great. It's interesting and amazing how you orientate yourself towards something, right? You can have it be your biggest fear, but when there's something behind it and there's a reason, this is why it's so great. I love companies that have like a charity, a giving mindset, and when you have that give back in there, there's a bigger reason for what you're doing. And I think that is so amazing. And I can see, the through line here with your book about better than you think. Right. And it'd be interesting to see, like, as you were dancing and all the things you were thinking, you didn't see yourself as a dancer. Right. And I love the title about that. And, I'd love for you to talk about what was behind writing that book and just the whole idea about developing awareness for a more fulfilling life. So talk a little bit about the book.
A couple pieces here. I think in our travels, as you have conversations with people, you find many people that are struggling to find fulfillment in their life. I come across that often. I'm like, okay, what fulfills you? What makes you tick? And that's part of the process. But then the other side of it is, okay, over the last 30 some years, I've read over 1,000 books, and I've developed a lot of awareness, not just from the reading, but from the experiences that you have. And it's like awareness, experience. Oh, I became aware of an experience I had. Now I have more awareness, another experience, awareness. It's just back and forth. So I believe in my heart of hearts that awareness is the foundation of everything. You have an awareness, then you can go work on something and build this success or this pyramid or whatever. And so what I did, I was reading books. I started in 1990, and it was in 2001. I'm like, okay, I got enough experience in reading material and content. I can write a book. So I had this dream or vision of writing a book in 2001. And along the way, the short version is in 2005, I wrote a chapter. I didn't think I was good enough, smart enough for anyone who's going to read my stuff. 2009, I wrote a chapter, felt the same way. 2014, I wrote 2 chapters, felt the same way. Until finally I have this little mastermind group. It was 4 of us, it's 3 of us now. And we get together at the end of every year and do a year review. And we talk through your wins, your losses, your aha moments, and gratitude.
Right.
And so we lags. I'm sorry?
We lags.
Yeah, right. Okay. So you're a Darren Hardy person, am I right?
I know it very well.
Yeah, okay. So we use this book, Living Your Best Year Ever. And so we were going over the losses. It was December of 2016, and it was my turn to go through the losses. And I didn't even finish the sentence. And I'd been telling my friends for 4 years that the thing I'm going to do this year is write a book, my BHAG, write a book. And I started to say, as you guys know, I didn't finish the sentence. And my buddy looks at me and goes, Rob, you're either lying to us or you're full of crap. And he didn't say it that nicely, by the way. And, so right then and there, I knew I had to commit to something. I've been talking about this and telling everyone I'm going to do it. I put it out there, and I'm like, it's time to commit. So I told these guys January 1st of 2017, I was committing to write every morning from 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. And it took 6 months basically to get all the content written. I had a manuscript finished by June 23rd of 17, sent it off to the editor. And as you know, when you send something off to the editor, when it's black and white, a lot of blood comes back, more red than black and white. And so over a period of 2 years, with about 14 edits, we published the book. So I want people to have experiences to recognize, they have awareness of the experiences in their life and really resonate on those moments and those experiences and figure out what that means to them. And so in sharing my experiences in the book and what lessons I've learned, it wasn't a hope to say, hey, look at me, look at my experiences, look at my awarenesses. I just wanted a story that I was sharing to resonate with the reader so that they could say, man, I had a similar experience. What's the lesson for me? Mm-hmm. And then that build a foundation of all these experiences and then say, hey, my life is probably better than I thought it was. And in seeing that, I can find fulfillment in the life I've lived. Right. If that all makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting, like when a lot of times the word awareness can be really elusive. And, it reminds me of the quote by Les Brown that says, you can't see the big picture when you're in the frame. And a lot of times when you're in it, you don't have that awareness or you don't have perspective on it. How can someone actually start to look at what their patterns are, their experiences, and actually have the awareness to see how it's impacting them?
Great question. And I had a similar experience that happened to me about just a little over a year ago, because there's three different levels of awareness that I've come to learn about and read about. And the first of which is you have an experience, and then you look back and you say, okay, wow, I had this experience. This is what I learned. The second level this is what I've been really focusing on lately, is you have an experience and you don't have to look back because bang, in the moment, you have this awareness right there in the moment. The third level, which I think is a very high level of consciousness or awareness, is to kind of have an awareness before an event happens. Like it's almost like an anticipatory awareness. If I do this, this is what's going to happen, and be spot on. So how do you get to that point? And I think it's just having these little experiences, one moment at a time, and that's the key word, I think, the moment, being in the moment. And when you can coach yourself to be in the moment and rid yourself of all these outside distractions, then you can have that awareness in the moment. And if you can build on that one thing at a time, the next thing you know, an experience will happen. Like, I got it. That's what I'm supposed to learn from that. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight. I really believe it's not going to happen overnight, but it's just this constant coaching and going back and being in the moment.
Yeah. Oh, it's so great. One of the things that you talk about in the book is the difference between having a full life versus a fulfilled life. I'd love for you to share that there's 4 traits that contribute to a fulfilled life. Can you share what that's about?
Yeah. And so I don't have the book on me right now. So I know that's on the back cover of the book, but it's about one, gratitude's a big piece of it. Gratitude's a big piece of it. Being transparent, living a committed life. And I think that one of the things I mentioned in the book is about the being able to quiet your mind, because this is one of the pieces that helps you become more aware. It is to quiet your mind and be able to get rid of those distractions. And a lot of people do meditation, right? And I meditate. I do this thing called contemplative prayer. And it's about getting your mind quiet. And what happens is when you're able to get your mind quiet and get yourself to a place of, let's just say, nothingness, which is very difficult to do, you get to that place, then what happens is you just allow these you open up these frequencies for other good things to come into your mind. And when you do that, then you expand your horizons to become more aware of things. So that once you do that, and once you have that, I guess, skill refined, or you're working on that skill, it's getting better and better, then I know I mentioned in a book, to the point of start listening to the voice inside. Mm-hmm. And how can we get really skilled of knowing when that voice is talking to us, knowing that, okay, something, because you got this gut, they say the gut, the instinct, the intuition, whatever it is, but how do you know when the voice is talking to you, and what is that voice? And I feel like I've gotten pretty good at that. And 3 or 4 things happen. You hear it, or 1, you don't hear it at all. 2, you hear it and you don't take action. 3, you hear it and you take action. Or 4, you hear it and you do the opposite. And that's when you're getting in trouble, right? Yeah. And I've learned my lesson a few times in there. So I would say, yeah, it's about being transparent, listening to the voice, the getting the mind quiet, and the gratitude piece.
Yeah.
It's built around those things.
So good. The intuition piece is such an important thing. I mean, I can remember when I was working undercover as a police officer, and you have split seconds to make decisions and to really learn and hone the skill of trusting yourself. And when we have something that comes up where it's like, the hair on the back of our head or our arm comes up, when we start like leaning into that and listening to that, I really believe those are the things that not only save our life, but help us make quicker decisions and really look at things from a different perspective. And you talk about like having a relationship with God and about like asking over and over again. I love that distinction, because a lot of times some people say, well, ask once and let it go. But I love the distinction about keep asking.
It's just like the title of my podcast is called Chiseled. So it's just like you're chiseling away, because they say, God answers all prayers. Some of the prayers aren't supposed to be answered. Some of the answers are no, right? And so he answers all prayers. He doesn't say he says yes to every prayer, but he answers all prayers. So it's just about chiseling away, and being persistent with the ask. And my daughter asked me one time, she said to me, and this is great. We were driving in the car one time, and she says, Dad, do you think God gets mad at me for asking for the same thing over and over? I'm like, no, honey, he wants you to do that. He wants you, by you asking for the same thing over and over, it shows like in your heart how much you really want something. Whether he's going to give it to you or not, that remains to be seen.
Right. Right. That's so good. I think sometimes instead of asking, for something to look a very specific way, I think even just like, hey, give me some clues, I'm on the right path. Right. It's kind of like take one step and the next step will be revealed. And so I love this, that it's part of that being in relationship, right? It's that connection. And, as you ask and move forward, you get the answers that show up in a different way. So I think that is super important. And, talking about, motivation, like what was the motivation behind the book, as well as the podcast?
So the motivation behind the book was more so that I had been reading this stuff for years. And what I learned early on, I'd read something and it would resonate with me and I'd be fired up. And I'm like, hey, Diane, you need to read this. And if I tell you, you need to do something, you may be hearing, Rob, you're telling me I'm broken. You're trying to fix me. And that doesn't always go over well. Right. So I'm having these experiences. I'm reading all this stuff. I got involved in Toastmasters and got into speaking and telling stories and whatnot, and felt like I got pretty good at it. And I'm like, what's the purpose of me holding all this information in here? Why not share it? And I just want to share and share and share. And like whatever I'm being exposed to and it's good, why hold it in? Right? You got to have that abundant mentality and put it out there. And so that, along with the chisel thing, this is a 2-minute story if you're okay with this, the whole chisel thing. It's interesting. In the book, I talk about listen to the voice inside. And back, gosh, it must have been in 2004 or 5, somewhere back there. I was in Toastmasters. And if people don't know what Toastmasters is, it's basically a public speaking forum where you go to learn to be a better speaker. And I would say a better listener. And so I was in the Toastmasters group. A guy in the club had died. I mean, his wife had died, and we were at a memorial service. And this woman who had a group in prison called the New Genesis Club asked me if I would be a speaker that the inmates could evaluate. And sure enough, I said yes. But I didn't want to just give them any old speech. I wanted to give them a message of hope. So I was sitting there one time, and all of a sudden, this vision and this voice came to me and said, "Jailbreak." Jailbreak. I'm like, a speech in prison called Jailbreak? I'm like, this is awesome. I'm fired up, right? And then what happens when we get a good idea every now and then, we try it, we start to defeat it. We're thinking, nah, that can't be right, or this isn't good, or that's going to happen. And you start coming up with these what ifs in a negative way. I'm like, wait a minute, somebody years ago told me that you will start going to the next level in your life and in your business when you start trusting the voice inside of you. So I'm like, jailbreak it is. So that's a whole nother podcast. I could tell you the whole story of going into prison and speaking to the inmates. It was phenomenal. But what happened was about 1.5 years ago, I finished my prayer in the morning. And previous to that, I had given 2 speeches on a Thursday and Friday. And in the presentations, when I was talking to people, I was telling them, look, I'm not the end all, I'm not the do all, I'm not the say all, but I am a work in progress. And so I did that 2 days in a row, on a Thursday and Friday. And then on a Saturday morning, I was listening to a Matthew Kelly piece. He's a Christian Catholic writer, speaker, and he had this piece out there, and he had a woman speaking for him. And she was doing a little blurb, 2-3 minute blurb. And she goes, look, we're all a work in progress. So it's 3 days in a row I heard this phrase, work in progress. So I sat down, I'm doing my praying meditation. And Diane, as true as I'm standing here today, I sat there and I just had this feeling and this excitement. It just ran up my body into my chest and shoulders. And I just have this vision. And I'm like, uh-oh, a half chiseled statue. And I'm like, that's a work in progress. And I'm like, I'm having a conversation with God. I'm like, God, are you telling me you want me to do a podcast and you want me to call it Chiseled because we're all work in progress? And the reason I knew it was right because I had the same feeling I had when I did that speech in the prison years ago. And I'm like, chiseled it is. And I'm like, God, I'll do this podcast. Never done it before. You just got to keep bringing me to people and I'll keep spreading the word. And that's how that came about.
I love it. It's so great. I mean, I'm going on 6 years with my podcast, and it's so amazing how people show up in my life, and then people will be like, "Oh, you need to talk to this person, that person," and like just whatever the themes are, whatever's happening with it. I definitely believe that they're God inspired, and they're in the moment that people hear the thing that they need to hear. And the thing about what you're talking about, like with intuition, it's like when you start seeing the patterns, right? Those aren't just coincidences that happen, right? Those are intentional. This is God getting your attention here. When you see things that happen, especially like in threes like that, that's like something you need to kind of pay a little extra attention to. And that is showing you that you're on the path, that you're moving in that direction. So I love that you listen to that.
Oh yeah. And I'm sure, I assume you may experience some similar things. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It saved my life a lot of times.
Yeah, right. Especially the undercover world, right?
Yeah, definitely. So Rob, what makes you tick?
The whole, I have a desire just to be the best that I can be and be the best version of myself. Like I tell people, I don't want to go to my grave with gas in the tank. Okay. So I want to be in my coffin and I want somebody up on the pulpit, the altar, whatever, giving my eulogy and say, man, Rob ran out of gas. I don't want to hear them say he had so much potential. If somebody says that at my funeral, when I'm in my casket, I'm climbing out of the casket. I'm going to jump up and I'm going to strangle them. So that's the part of trying to live to your fullest every day. If I'm living to my fullest every day, then I'm out of gas. And so it makes me tick to give it my best and share whatever I can share with anybody and help others along the way. But not everybody wants that. And so it's almost like you've got to be invited in and not force yourself on people. That's what makes me tick.
I love it. I think that's so great. I love that being out of gas, right? And it's like, what are you doing? We've heard before, people talking about, the dash, right? Like you've got when you were born and when you died, but the dash is that important part in the middle. Like, what did you do in this journey here? We don't know how long that time is, but to just be playing full out and to live an inspired life, I think is such an important thing. And especially now, like people are just, whether it's fears or circumstances or, Chicken Little, the sky is falling, whatever those things are, it's our perspective, right? It's how we look at things that allow us to make the choices and be intentional about what we're doing. And you talk about having some foundations to growth in life's journey. What are some of those foundations?
Well, so when you say foundations, you mean like what do I build my life upon, so to speak?
Yes.
And so I look at one area. There's 5 areas in my life, right? It's spiritual, it's my family, it's the finances. And when we talk about finances, it's not about having as much money as you can. It's just being a good financial steward, right? Being a steward of your money. It's the what I said, the spiritual, family, business, finances, and then there's personal things that come along. So these are like my 5, I guess, basic pillars, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I try to focus in these 5 areas, every day. Now, I'm not going to be 20% here, 20% here, 20% here, so on. I could spend 5% of my day in one area and 80% in another area and still have it balanced, if you will, because I only need 5% here and I might need 80% there, if that makes sense. Yes. But so in my personal sphere, it's like it's physical, it's emotional, those areas too. So I'm looking to build upon that foundation. So to answer the question, it's those 5 areas of my life which are foundational to my growth.
Got it. And which of the 5 do you feel like you're focusing most of your time these days?
That's a great question because it does change. So I do I'd say every 6 months I do and I probably need to do it more often. I do like a recalibration of where I have this life circle, and I look to see on a scale of 1 to 10 in each area, where am I? And sometimes the wheel, well, very seldom is the wheel completely round. There's always something that's suffering, or I'm focusing on more attention more in one area than the other. So spiritual and family are my two big things that are important to me right now. And I feel like if I focus on those two things, everything else will fall into place. But that's where I'm at right now. That could change. If the business goes south really quick, I could my spiritual will be even higher, because I'll be praying to God to make sure it all works out. but then I'll be focusing on the finances and the business more, right? So it just happens. So it depends where you are on any given day.
Right. Well, and they're all interwoven. When you have an intentional life and you look at, where you're focusing in those areas, it makes a big difference. Which reminds me, we live differently in our home versus our kitchen or our office. What's your favorite room in your home and why?
I would too. I love that. I love that question. So I'll just say the kitchen first, because I love to eat. Okay. So I enjoy baking. I enjoy cooking, which is very therapeutic for me. So the kitchen, but my home office is where I do a lot of my reading and praying and meditating. And I call it my thinking chair, or my meditation chair. And I like to read, journal, pray, and meditate in that chair. So those are the two favorite rooms in the house for me. Now, I don't tell my wife this, but anyway, the bedroom's important too. But
I'm sure she would want to know that, actually.
Yeah, right. So it's all good.
So good.
Don't tell her put it third. Don't tell her put it third is what I'm trying to say.
There you go. Hey, it changes every day, right? That's how you keep the spice happening, right?
There you go.
Good stuff. Awesome. Well, as you know that our theme for this season is how you're choosing freedom. In what way are you choosing freedom?
Oh, I love that. So what does freedom mean to you, right? What does freedom mean to me? And I think the basis or foundational piece for freedom is having choices. Right. I think the more choices you have, the more freedom you create. So how am I working on freedom? I want to create choices. And how do I create choices? One, by being the best I can be in all these different areas of my life. So let's just start with finances, right? The people can use money as a false sense of security, or they can use it as a place to create choices for them, which in a sense creates freedom, right? So you have freedom there. So then I think, okay, in my spiritual world, if I detach myself from things, so I'm learning, this is what I'm working on right now from a spiritual sense, is working on detaching myself from things, outcomes, and so on and so forth. Because the more detachment I have, the more freedom I have. That I'm assuming that makes sense. I think that's people have to understand that we get attached to things, people, philosophies, money, whatever, and we're attached. And when you're attached to something, it kind of binds you up and locks you up. But when you have this, like if you're holding on to things too much, there's a tension there. But when you open the hands and open the arms, there's detachment and there's freedom. So right now, I think the biggest thing I'm working on is the spiritual sense of detachment to create more freedom in my life.
Yeah, that is so great. I love that because, it's like that distinction between, you can have all the knowledge in the world. I mean, read a lot of books, a lot of things happening, but there's a distinction between knowledge and knowing. Right. And what you're talking about and having all these different foundational aspects is, knowing where to step in, where to back off, where to get some of that balance in there and creating that freedom in your life. So I love how intentional you are about that. And it's great. I love it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes. So I know that our listeners are going to want to stay in contact with you. How can they best do that?
Well, a few things. I mean, if you want to give me a call, I'm happy to take your call, but I just hope it doesn't come through as spam anyway, or scam, whatever they come through. But you get a hold of me at 410-262-7396. You can email me at robcommodariauthor.com. Wait, am I saying that right? No, that's the website. I'm getting confused myself right now. Talk to Rob at robcommodariauthor.com. That's it. Rob at robcommodariauthor.com. Yes. And then the website is robcommodariauthor.com.
Perfect. And we'll have that in the show notes as well. So people can, dive down into that and reach out with you. So
yeah, thank you. I'm happy to share and chat with anybody about all this stuff. I love it.
Perfect. Well, Rob, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your journey. And I think it's so important that people get to see that it's a process. I mean, your book is a perfect example of just that stick-to-itness and, having people around you that keep you accountable to, your dreams and the things that are important to you. So thank you for being that example.
Thank you for having me, Diane. This has been awesome. I appreciate it. And again, it's just about who we become. Like we become the example for others, and just sharing who you are and what you can do and how you can help people. That's what's important. So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You got it. My pleasure. And for our listeners out there, this is a time to really explore, what is your intentionality? What are you doing? Are you listening to that intuition? Really take this to heart. And, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either Rob or myself. We're happy to help you. And please share this, get this out there in the world, because we want people to have the freedom that they are creating, that they are, in partnership with themselves, their God, and all the things that matter to them. And until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.